Until the mid-1980s, success in the fashion industry was based on low-cost mass production of standardized styles that did not change frequently due to the design restrictions of the factories, such as Levi's 501 jeans and the man's white shirt, although there were exceptional cases of rapid changing in haute couture. Apparently, consumers during that time were less sensitive towards style and fashion and preferred basic apparel. There was a sudden increase in the import of fashion-oriented apparel for women as compared to the standardized apparel. This reduced the demand for classic, though simple apparel as consumers started becoming more fashion conscious. For example, the women's legwear industry introduced colors and textures to basic hosiery to coordinate with every outfit. Unfortunately, this change in fashion-oriented apparel contributed to an increase in markdowns in the market, which became necessary due to the failure to sell fashion apparel during the forecasted season. As fashion is considered to be a temporal cyclical phenomena adopted by consumers for a particular time, it becomes evident that the life cycle for fashion is quite small. Since the 1980s, a typical life cycle for fashion apparel had 4 stages: introduction and adoption by fashion leaders, growth and increase in public appearance, mass conformity, maturation, and finally the decline and obsolescence of fashion. Also, the fashion calendar during this time was primarily based on the fabric exhibitions, fashion shows, and trade fairs that consisted of the basic pattern of spring/summer and autumn/winter ranges, which typically resulted in developing a seasonal range in one full year. However, towards the beginning of the 1990s, retailers started focusing on expanding their product range with updated products and faster responsiveness to the newness of the fashion trends, and providing refreshing products instead of only cost efficiencies for manufacturing. In order to increase the variety of fashion apparel in the market, the concept of adding more phases to the existing seasons, that is the period of time during which a fashion products are sold in a fashion calendar, came into existence. The addition of 3 to 5 mid-seasons forced immense pressure on suppliers to deliver fashion apparel in smaller batches with reduced lead time. For instance, Liz Claiborne developed 6 seasons instead of just 2. These changes to the number of mid-seasons arose partly from the changes in consumers' lifestyles and partly from the need to satisfy consumers' demand for fashion clothing for specific occasions. Towards the late 1980s, the fashion apparel industry was dominated by several larger retailers, which increased their competition levels in the market. In order to survive the competition, other fashion apparel retailers switched from product-driven to buyer-driven chains, developed alliances with suppliers in different markets, and promoted their distinctive brands. This resulted in an increase of profits from unique combinations of research, design, sales, and marketing that would allow them and the manufacturers to act strategically by linking with overseas factories. The fashion apparel industry developed an infrastructure around the late 1980s with an emphasis on promoting responsiveness, quick response, through reduced lead times along with maintaining low costs. Which of the following options best states the central theme of the passage? Now, the passage starts by analyzing the standards for success in the fashion industry in the 1980s. It moves on to discuss the changes that took place in this decade. The author also discusses the life cycle for fashion apparel since the 1980s. The trends of the 1990s find mention in the 3rd paragraph. Okay. The move of the apparel industry towards quick responsiveness and fast fashion is discussed in the last 2 paragraphs. Option C in the choices includes both main points of discussion of the passage and is therefore the answer. We are looking at choice C here. Option A is incorrect because it concentrates on a partial aspect of the discussion, that is the change in the apparel industry in the past 2 decades. Option B is incorrect because the passage doesn't only look at fast fashion and its emergence, and D is incorrect because it is beyond the scope of the passage. So your answer is going to be C. Which of the following options would help support the point made in the second paragraph? Now, if we look at the second paragraph, which is given here, it discusses the changes that took place as consumers became more fashion conscious. The first sentence states the main point of the paragraph. Indicating that as consumers became more fashion conscious, they also moved away from standardized apparel. The example of the legwear industry also proves that when a specific niche product was introduced, it led to the difficulty of selling fashion apparel that conformed to the mass market. If we look at the choices carefully, we'll find out that option A is the best answer. Mass production of fashion products was not a solution to gain profits in the fashion business. Option B is incorrect because it does not explain the point made in the second para and wrongly indicates that markdowns were used for all apparel. Option C is incorrect because it is related to last season's fashion, whereas the paragraph deals with trends that were present. Option D is incorrect because it refers to a widening of the scope of the fashion industry but fails to mention the downward trend of the mass market. So your answer is going to be A. Which of the following options would fit into the second stage of the fashion life? Now let's find out in which passage we have information. If we look at the passage again, the third para mentions the 4 stages of the fashion life cycle. The second stage is mentioned as growth and increase in public appearance. Now, option D is the answer. If you look at option D here, because it says the appearance of the latest men's jacket style on the red carpet and subsequently in various celebrity events. Now, this is what we mean by saying that there is a growth and increase in public appearance. So your answer is going to be D, because it indicates the increase in public appearance of the fashion product. Now, what about the other choices? Option A is incorrect because it belongs to the first stage of the life cycle, introduction and adoption by fashion leaders. Option B belongs to the third stage, mass conformity or maturation. Option C belongs to the fourth stage, decline and obsolescence of fashion. So that is why your answer is going to be D for delta. It can be inferred that the switch from product driven to buyer driven chains would have been advantageous to fashion apparel retailers because. Now, in order to find the answer to this question, we need to look at the last paragraph. Now, it mentions that in order to survive competition, fashion apparel retailers were forced to switch from product-driven to buyer-driven chains as one of the many steps taken. This resulted in increased profit and helped the retailers to develop quick response to the market. It is thus indicated that a survival measure to buyer-driven chains led to responsiveness and was derived from a closer relationship between retailers and buyers. If you look at the choices given here, we will figure out easily that B is the best answer because it brought the retailers closer to the demands of the end consumer and led to quick responsiveness. Option A is incorrect because it cannot be linked with a buyer-driven perspective. Option C is incorrect because it fails to mention if this option was a measure adopted keeping in mind the consumer's choice. Option D mentions low cost and changes in the supply chain, again without stating if these were advantages to the consumer or required by this group. So your answer is going to be B.